Good morning, Sister Declare. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to see Blossom Women Fellowship, the platform. I'm delighted to see it blossom. And I thank God for the objectives, the vision. And I love that part about social impact. I really do. And I'm trusting God and thanking you all for praying for this session, particularly praying for me, that indeed we will receive and apply good wisdom for right choices. Good morning, everyone. If you're a first timer, you are so welcome. Thank you, everyone, for showing love. Let's not waste too much time. The introductions have been done, and I apologize in advance because I know in this online meetings world that we live in now, I know that we are often showing you slides. I wish I could say I wasn't showing you any slides, but I am. So I apologize in advance because you probably had Monday to Friday, particularly I know a lot of our ladies are working in tech. So you've probably been looking at a screen and looking at slides. I apologize. I've tried to not make them too text heavy, but I understand if you feel like you just need to look away at some point. Okie doke. So let me share my screen. It's great to see so many of us this morning. Thank you so much for taking time to join. Lovely, lovely. And those of you that have heard me present before, you'll know what I'm going to say next, which is if the slides are going in the wrong direction, it's because I'm a right-handed person, a left-handed person living in a right-handed body. So yeah. All right, so let's go for it, shall we? Eating well for good mental health. And thank you again for everyone that prayed. I'm just going to say a really quick word of prayer. And, I just want to offer a very warm welcome for those of you that are not of any particular faith persuasion. That's so brilliant. I'm a Christian, as you probably heard in the introduction. And I will refer to faith throughout the session, but it isn't anything to sway or to that will mean that you can't participate in today. And I just want to share a word of prayer because we love the Lord and he really helps us to do things like this. So Father God, we thank you once again for this amazing Blossom Network. Thank you for every woman that signed in, and thank you for those that will sign in. Lord, the key word this morning, Lord, is good wisdom. So Lord, help me to impart good wisdom and help everyone on the platform to receive good wisdom to make good choices. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen and amen. Awesome. Can everyone see the screen, and is my voice clear?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, Sister Duque. Okie doke. So eating well for good mental health. So our session outline is really just quickly the aim, a quick introduction, and then we'll talk about food and mood, and then we'll go right in and look at particular components. I'll probably be skipping around vitamins and minerals, talking about sugar, caffeine, comfort eating. There are a few more hidden slides in there, like those movies when you get like some free extra slides. There's some free extra slides in there. So we'll be talking about chemicals. So we'll be talking about dopamine, serotonin, and their effects. We'll also be talking about fat, so fatty acids, and the effects again on mental health. Okay, so by way of introduction, it is true that what we eat can affect the way we feel, but it's also true that the way we feel can affect what we eat. And can I just say from the get-go, and I love the way that the Blossom platform have approached this, I think we are really moving away from a psychology where we are just discussing individual compartments of our bodies. Can I be very honest? Your psychological, or let's talk in a coinage that is a bit clearer, your body, your soul, and your spirit are all interconnected. What happens in your spirit will affect your soul. So when we're talking about the soul, we mean your mind, your will, your emotions, and that will affect your body, and vice versa. It is highly integrated. And I think, in the last 20 years of modern medicine, we are really now opening ourselves to that compartment that, can I be honest, a lot of clinicians have been scared of, the soul. They've been scared to talk about the connections with how are you feeling and how is that affecting you? How is that affecting functionality? How is that affecting uptake of, advice? And I think COVID, as it's come and really, it has come and rattled the whole world. But I think COVID has also really tipped us upside down, shaken us out, and a lot of change has fallen out of our pockets. And we've said to ourselves, hang on, why haven't we been talking about this compartment for much sooner? Why haven't we been addressing, mind, will, and emotion? And those of us that do attend church, I think, it's a compartment that we do talk about, but sometimes I think we kind of leave it hanging a bit. So we don't join together what it means when we talk about the body and how it functions, and your mind, will, and emotion, and what that does, and the connection with your spirit. But today I really want to focus on the soul, so mind, will, emotion, and the body, simply because usually the spiritual side is a side that involves prayer and other doctrines that are not part of today's session. Okay, so evidence suggests that our physical health and also our mental health is definitely affected by food choices. The answer to today, so you already get a gold star if you think, I know what she's going to say next. The answer is balance, gold star to you. But then we usually know the answer, but it's one of the hardest things to apply, because a balanced diet doesn't happen without a balanced mind, a balanced will, and a balanced emotion. It just doesn't happen. So a balanced diet, eating it, choosing it, living that balanced life is part of something that emanates from a balanced mind. So, I know as a dietitian, myself and my colleagues, we're guilty. We throw this thing out about balanced diet, food choices, but actually that doesn't often happen without a balanced mind, and vice versa. But we do know, however, that, what we call your diet, your foods, macronutrients, micronutrients, and fluid, they have a colossal effect on how we feel, and therefore our mental functionality, and right down to your bones. The way that you feel will affect certain foods that you eat, and that will affect your bones. It will affect your immune system. So as we're moving to winter, I imagine people are probably thinking, I must start taking more vitamin C. But actually, that's just a tiny component of the whole picture. I must say that food as fuel for the body has probably been sold to you and oversold. As I said, you probably know the answer is balanced diet, but food as fuel for your mind, your will, and emotion is what we want to unwrap a little bit more of today. All right, so we talked about healthy eating, and there are quite a few guides out there. The Eat Well guide is the guide that we often use. And what I want to say in terms of balance is that the Eat Well guide is still our great friend. But what I want you to think about is the Eat Well guide is, the guide says eat well, but if your mind or the way you feel, your mind, your will, your emotion, your mental compartments, if they're not in check, you may be eating well, in quotes, you may be making the right choices, but if you're not feeling well, that will not be sustainable. And if I go right back to the beginning, we talked about social change and we talked about choices. What we want is sustainable changes in terms of healthy eating. So if you've seen the Eat Well plate, it still stands, nothing to change about that. It's all about balance. When we leave one, we miss something else. When we have too much of one, we're missing something else. So it is about balance, and it is about that Eat Well plate. The Eat Well plate is telling us that we should have a balance of macronutrients, so carbohydrates. I mean, I don't know who convinced us that carbohydrates were our enemy. You will look like Bay, don't get me wrong, you will look amazing. And I think one of the issues, can I say, particularly our gender as females, is that I think in terms of dietary changes, we have focused so much on how we will look. So we take all sorts of diets. And what are diets are something that excludes something, it shifts the balance. so that something, food groups or components are excluded. And I think the only time that that should really be happening is when there is a clinical need diagnosed by a professional, i.e. if you have a wheat intolerance, a professional, qualified professional will say avoid wheat. But, you know, as a dietitian over the last 26 years, I've seen people do all sorts of exclusions, and often they're nothing to do with their mental health, although they want to feel well, but it's because they want to look well. And as I said, these diets will help you to look well, but they're not helping the way we feel. And there is a negative feedback system which says, I don't feel so well, so I'll go on to another diet. I don't like what I see about myself, so I'll go into another diet. But your mind is actually saying, or your brain is saying, do you know what, just feed me the right stuff. Feed me the right stuff first. Let's deal with what's in the mirror second, because if you feel good about yourself, what you see in the mirror will be a lot more pleasing. Now, obviously, there's an argument around health and functionality, but again, if your mind is functioning in its right capacity, the ability to balance what you see, as in, I don't like my tummy, versus actually, do you know what? A few pounds are not going to stop me from functioning. So the whole message about food for purpose is it's not about, you know, being a skinny mini. It's not about having a six pack. It's not about fitting into that outfit for your daughter's upcoming engagement. It is about getting to be the best version of yourself so that you can function purposefully. So what kind of dietitian am I? I'm the type that will advise you to manage your weight and your health and your holistic health as best you can, so that you can be the best version of yourself. So your ability to lose weight should be about your holistic health, and not because you have to be a size 10 because there's a particular chart that says so. It's about keeping you free from the risks of disease, but also feeding your mind, your body, so that you can function. So today is more about functionality rather than vanity. Okay, so does food affect your mood? I want you to unmute and tell me what you think, and if you can share an instance where you know that food has affected your mood. So please unmute and shout out, or put it in the chat. Does food affect mood? I've kind of alluded to it does, but actually, can you share a practical instance where you've experienced food affecting your mood?
Yes, ma'am. You said our mood dictates what we eat, and then food also dictates our mood sometimes. So from that perspective of mood dictating will be when I can't be bothered, then I just eat anything. But when I'm in a good mood, I'm ready to do all this prep for a good meal. Yes.
Thank you, Princess. Thank you so much, Princess Adiola. And that is 100% when we can't be bothered, all of that good stuff, because like I said, a lot of the time we know that we should be eating more veggies. We know we should be eating less meat. We know we should have meat-free days. We know that we should be eating oily fish because those oils are good for our brain. We know that we should be going for a walk. But on those days that we just can't be bothered, it all goes to pan, doesn't it? And we eat what we want. Now, interestingly, that eat what we want, that component, that what I want, is coming from your mind. So remember, the feeling I can't be bothered is actually a mood. And what it says to your brain, this mood says to your brain, so your will says to your brain, can't be bothered. Your brain says to your will, listen, Will, remember, I am the brain. I survive on glucose. Give me something. Now, you know, because you've heard Shola speak before, you know that I would prefer complex carbohydrates, high fiber, whole grain. But the brain says, I don't have a choice right now. You just get your act together and give me something, because if me, the brain, is not working, this show is shut down. So your will, remember, I can't be bothered. The will, the mood says, oh, all right then, brain, if you really insist. And the brain is like, yeah, I insist. I'm keeping you alive. So the will, which is not, can't be bothered, says, do you know what? I'm just going to go to Mackey's, just going to go to Mackie D's. I'm going to go for some cheap food that will shut the brain up. I'm going to go for something that's really quick and highly processed. So biscuits, because the brain wants something that is going to raise blood glucose, because the fuel of the brain is glucose. Now, it's not the brain's favorite type of fuel would be that you would give your body something that could be broken down slowly. But if you're not feeding yourself, your brain will tell you, just bring anything quick, 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 because we need fuel. And the brain will use glucose in that way. So it's really important that we understand that our mood will definitely affect, our food will affect our mood and vice versa. Quick one regarding children. A lot of the time we get quite upset, don't we, when our children don't do well at school. And one of the pieces of research that I'm going to be looking at soon is actually the mood of children who do really well in academia and those that don't, and what they eat. And what I see often in the mornings is children coming out of the sweet shop with chocolate bars. So I know for a fact that that child that has their sugary breakfast is going to behave badly in class, and that child is going to be seen as a noisemaker or a troublemaker, and probably underachieve because they have got that glucose, but it's a spike. Chocolate, it's already highly processed sugars. The blood glucose raises quickly and then it drops quickly. So if there are any teachers online, one of the areas to be looking at is diet. What is that child actually having in the morning? And God help us if those children are drinking caffeine drinks or the energy drinks. Again, high levels of caffeine up and then dropped. And when those blood glucose levels are dropped, they're misbehaving because they're bored. So let's go back to scripture in terms of food and mood and the functionality of food. So as I said, food is not just about, you know, our bodies being strong or our bodies looking good. I believe that, you know, right from the get-go, God always provided food, not just because it nourished our bodies, but because there was something about what we needed to function in our mood and our ability. Actually, God wanted us to enjoy food. And if you think about Eden, God created Adam and Eve and put them in a garden with an overload of food. Now, have you ever asked yourself why there are over 500 different types of apples in the world? To me, that tells me that God didn't just want to give us one type of food, but actually there was something there for us to enjoy. There was something there to us to provoke enjoyment. So food is fuel for our body, but also something for us to enjoy. When I think about Elijah, and you know, the prophet Elijah was known, wasn't he, for being quite depressed. And isn't it interesting that when God went to meet Elijah at Cherith at the brook, he fed him meat and bread. So he got some protein and some carbohydrates, because God knows that our body needs food, not just for functionality, but also to raise our mood. Jesus, interestingly, when his disciples, after he appeared to his disciples after the resurrection, very interesting, isn't it? Jesus went looking for them. They went fishing. They saw Jesus on the banks of the river. They were fishing. And again, Jesus had an interesting meal. He had fish and bread. So we've got those lovely fish oils and we've got bread. Again, we've got a nice balance of protein and carbohydrate, but God also knows that when we eat, when we've been low in our mood, that will bring our mood up. Interestingly, right in the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, we've got God providing water for Hagar. So again, I'm just outlining that, you know, this is not new stuff. God always provides. Water, again, affects our moods. A lot of the time, our mental capacity or our ability to reason well, or our mood is affected by hydration. If we're not drinking enough of the right fluids, we don't feel good. And we can be very cranky. And it can affect how we're dealing with people. And then, you know, the Israelites, again, God provided food in the wilderness in the form of water, manna. And of course, you know, those of us that are reading our Bibles will also see other parts of scripture where he provides other foods. So God announced food for man to function for his enjoyment, for his mood and his ability. And I love this passage in the book of Acts 14:16-17. It says, in the past, he permitted all the nations to go their own ways, but he never left them without evidence of himself and his goodness. For instance, he sends rain for good crops and gives you food and joyful hearts. So what I want to say is food is part of the package to feel good. However, we're often told, don't eat this, don't eat that, but actually food is actually part of the package for our enjoyment and not just because we're like a car that needs to function. So now we know that food and mood are definitely connected. Let's look at some particular instances. So let's talk about vitamins and minerals. Let's talk about carbs and brain power. Let's look at comfort eating, caffeine, and we'll talk about water as well. So some of the minerals that do definitely affect our mood are, particularly as women, are these three that are put up on the slide. So iron will affect the way you feel. Ladies, when was the last time you had your iron levels checked? Really, really important. So before that mood is going off, thank you. We'll just use the example of Adeola. Earlier, she said, you know, those days that I just don't feel like it or I can't be bothered. Often that is a sign that there is something else going on in your body. Now, I know that we don't live in a sterile society. There's always something going on, isn't there? We're just, you know, recovering or recoiling from the death of our queen. Some of us are, you know, we're still in this thing, aren't we, with the economic state. Things are still up in the air. With Ukraine. So we are surrounded by things that will affect how we feel. But a lot of the time, when you're feeling somehow, and people say to me often, sis, I just feel somehow. One of the areas that we need to look inward. Is a quick check is, what are my internal levels like? And we do this with the car, don't we? When there's a light on the dashboard, we don't just say, oh, well, you know, things will be okay. Let's just drive down to Kent from Southeast London. It will be all right. But often we do that with our bodies. So when we're feeling like I can't be bothered, it's really important that we do an introspective check. And one of those is iron. Now, a lot of us, as we sit here, a lot of us are sustaining what I call suboptimal iron levels. But we can function. We're functioning because, you know, as women, ladies, let's not lie, we are like superheroes. I am telling you, we just keep going, don't we? We just keep going. We're multifunctional, we're sustainable. We are, you know, we are just always going and always giving. But your low iron levels may be making you feel moody, making you feel tired and cranky, and therefore you're not making good decisions. Mothers of daughters, please, 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 especially during their periods, please make sure that we are encouraging our daughters to have high iron foods. Sometimes our daughters that are menstruating, they have suboptimal iron levels. There is research to show, particularly in Black African and Asian communities, that girls perform less well academically because of their iron levels, and they're disruptive in class because of iron levels. And I know it'll be the same for boys as well. So it might be your iron levels. Low vitamin B. This is an interesting one for pre-PMT or pre-menstrual tension. There's a lot of evidence that's showing again that a lot of us are walking around with suboptimal vitamin B levels. So we're tired, and I'm using the word depressed because that's how it presents. We are as though we have been pressed down, and it's not because you've not prayed. It's because of your diet, and it's not because you're not eating. It's just that you're missing some of the components. So B vitamins are found in whole grains. A lot of us are not eating enough whole grains, but we're going for a lot of processed food. So, you know, white rice, white pasta, bread that is highly processed. Any of these highly processed foods are low in B vitamins. B vitamins are that thing that gives you the oomph and gets you going. And then vitamin D deficiency. I know Dr. Simi talked about this. I cannot overemphasize this. I think COVID has done us a great service as healthcare professionals in terms of vitamin D. One of the signs of low vitamin D is depression. I get really cross with particularly GPs. Sorry if there are any GPs online. I know you're brilliant, but I get really cross with GPs who, you know, you have someone in front of you saying, doctor, I feel really low. And they're like, yeah, here's some antidepressants. And I'm like, oh my God, didn't they ask you about your vitamin D? Did they not ask you about iron? Didn't they ask you about your diet? Did they do a diet history? And they didn't. And I'm like, oh no, just by addressing your diet. I'm not saying it's the be all and end all, but it is a lot of the time the forgotten relative. Because we think about diet and we think about being slim, or we think about functionality, but the internal, the environment is so sensitive, more sensitive than the outward environment in terms of these, what we call vitamins and minerals, or micronutrients. Micronutrients means we need a lot less of them, but I think micro also means that we forget them because they're so small. So vitamin D deficiency, low levels of vitamin D have been known to contribute to schizophrenia and depression, and what I call what is called seasonal affective disorder. It's called SADS. And basically, as the weather changes, and this may affect many of you, and it's, you know, it's no shame if it does, the lack of sunlight for many people sends them into a lower mood, an almost depressive state. It's highly acknowledged in the public domain, but I think for some people, particularly when I'm working with Black African, Black Caribbean communities, sometimes we can feel a bit embarrassed to say, you know, I feel a bit sad now that the sun has gone, but it's a normal syndrome, particularly if you lived and grew up in a sunny environment. So if you grew up in Africa or the Caribbean or India or the Mediterranean, you will probably be suffering from seasonal affective disorder. There's less daylight, there's less sunshine, your mood is low, but vitamin D can actually help that. How much should you be taking? Government guidance is quite low. It says 10 micrograms. I would recommend, and I think Dr. Simi also said she would, at least 1,000 international units a day, at least 1,000. And I think if you go to Dr. Simi's website, she does actually sell them on the website. You can also get them in any supermarket, at least 1,000. So if you're feeling sad when the weather changes, or if you're feeling, you know, low in mood, please do think about your vitamin D. Another one that's often forgotten is selenium. Iron usually gets all of the headline and selenium is forgotten. Selenium is an element very similar to iron, does similar things, really important for blood, but really important for mood. Again, it's found in a lot of vegetables, green leafy vegetables, and beans and pulses. So your spinach, your kale, your ugu, your water leaf, all of those, yes, 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 it does affect our mood. So eating ourselves happy. This is kind of the sciencey bit, and I apologize if it is a bit boring, but I promise you it's so important. So serotonin is a chemical messenger in the brain which improves mood and sleep, actually, and eating complex carbohydrates. So these are whole grain carbohydrates. So if we think about our foods, what we're talking about are things like oats. We're talking about whole grain, so brown rice. We're thinking about foods that have not been processed. Thinking about beans and pulses, thinking about the grains, quinoa, whole grain or the wild rice. So those of us that are hailing from West Africa, ofada rice is a wild rice. I know it can be hard to get hold of and it can be hard to clean, but it's brilliant in terms of the vitamins and minerals. Quinoa is another one, a little bit pricey, but really, really useful as an alternative to rice. And it does actually help to absorb more serotonin. So serotonin does affect your mood. Dopamine is another one, very interesting. So can we eat ourselves happy? Well, we can actually eat more foods that provoke the release of serotonin and dopamine. Dopamine is involved with your mood and movement and reward and pleasure. So dopamine says, wow, that was really good. Let's do that again. And so reinforcing that good feeling behavior. So foods that are high in serotonin, well, serotonin isn't really the component we're looking for in food, but what we're looking for is tryptophan. So tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin and dopamine. Sorry, it sounds really sciencey. Let's bring it into normal language. So for tryptophan, we're looking for protein-rich foods and foods that are high, foods that have grains or nuts and seeds. So meat, so your lamb, your goat, your chicken, this is a good time to be eating them. If you don't eat meat, absolutely fine. Fish is high in tryptophan, as are eggs. Eggs are high in tryptophan. Cheese, if you're a fan, high in tryptophan. And the beauty of these is that you don't have to eat loads of it. So I'm not saying go stuff yourself. If we think about the balance of our plates, if you have a plate and you drew a line down the middle of your plate, 50% of your plate should be vegetables. And already you've got quite a few, you've got your selenium, you've got your iron, you've got your B vitamins on that plate already. And you've even got some other vitamins and minerals. The other half of your plate, if you cut that in half of that should be for your protein. So your meat, your fish, your beans, your eggs, and the other half should be for your carbohydrates. So we're not talking about you eating loads of meat and loads. All we're talking about is the balance. So beans and pulses, so your black-eyed beans, your haricot beans, baked beans can be our friend, particularly the ones that are low salt and low sugar. They can be our friends. Oloyin beans or honey beans, steamed beans, so your moi, fantastic. Lentils, fantastic for tryptophan. It's a precursor which the body uses to make serotonin. Low serotonin levels are linked to depression. So basically diets that are low in meat, fish, eggs, cheese, pulses, nuts and seeds, they will be those that will be put us at a risk of feeling more depressed. So staying with our vitamins and minerals, you're probably thinking, so what foods then help me to get those? So iron-rich foods, just as a reminder, red meat. And I know that there's like a warning sign, isn't there, on red meat? Remember, we just talked about, it doesn't mean eating loads of it, but a portion of red meat can help you. What is a portion? It's about just over the size of a small matchbox. So it isn't a lot at all. Just want to say a quick one about red meat. I know that red meat is expensive now, but offals can be a little bit cheaper. So kidneys and liver can be a bit cheaper. Just want to put a disclaimer out there for things like, for those people that eat hide or I'm trying to remember, pomo, or animal hide, it doesn't have anything in it. So it's not high in anything. Just, it's great, it's chewy, but it's not giving you many vitamins or minerals, and neither are some of the other inners. So the other inners, things like what am I thinking of? Some of the inners, the shaki. It isn't that high in iron. So people say it's meat, I'm eating it. It isn't high in iron at all. So we really are looking at red meat. If you're not a red meat eater, beans and pulses, fantastic for iron. However, to release the iron, you have to be eating it with a source of vitamin C. What does that mean? So tomatoes or broccoli, spinach, or kale. If you want to release the iron from our beans, which is a good source of iron, we need to be having some vitamin C, or just a small glass, emphasis on small glass, of orange juice. Really important if you're a veggie in the audience. Green veggies, again, good for iron, and fortified cereals. A lot of cereals now have iron on them, but watch out for the sugary ones. B vitamins, where do we find those? Whole grain cereals again, meat, fish, eggs, and dairy. So fortified cereals are the things like Weetabix, some of the other whole grain cereals, they actually have, you'll see on the label that they have B vitamins added to them. Selenium in seeds. So the seeds that I'll say that may be relevant to this group again, fantastic seeds in our diets, egusi, ogbono, those kind of seeds are brilliant for selenium and for iron actually, and for B vitamins. Brazil nuts, wholemeal bread, and fish, particularly the ones that we eat. So the hake, the tilapia, salmon's a bit pricey now. Mackerel can really be brilliant. They can be our friend. And vitamin D, There isn't much vitamin D in foods. There isn't enough to sustain us, and that's why we recommend the supplements. Okay, let's talk about glucose levels and the brain. As I said earlier, the fuel of the brain is glucose, which is carbohydrates broken down slowly. So the brain wants a constant supply. That's why we should eat regular meals. A constant supply means I give my brain some in the morning, some in the afternoon, some in the evening. And if you're on a particular diet regimen, because I know some people are doing different types of diets or different type of fasting regimens, particularly if they've been recommended by a healthcare professional, follow your regimen, but just ensure that you have at least a window where there's enough time to give your brain a constant supply of carbohydrate. The rule with carbohydrates and the brain and mental health is avoid the spikes. The spikes are caused by sweets, cakes, fizzy drinks. They raise blood and fruit juice. I don't know if the juicing gang is in the house, but please, 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 if you're juicing, your juices should be 60% veg and 40% juice. Fruit juices release sugar straight into the bloodstream. Blood glucose goes up, great, and goes down, and you don't feel so good. So really important. So how do we want to release the glucose to our brain? We want to release it through whole grain foods. They're going to be broken down into glucose, but slowly. So the brain is saying, take your time, release it slowly, slowly, slowly. None of those up, down, up, down. I know when we don't feel like it, when we're busy, when we're on the go, usually we'll take biscuit, a fried snack, something like puff puff, nice and tasty, but think about your environment. Think about what's that going to do to my mood. I'm going to feel great for a while, blood glucose up, then I'm going to feel awful again. Often because we're really busy, guess what we do? We think, I need to eat another puff puff. Oh, let me drink some Supermalt because I'm told that that's going to help me. Now, Supermalt has got a lot of sugar, about 11 teaspoons of sugar in one bottle. So you might feel good for a while. Blood glucose goes up, but guess what? It's going to drop again. And then you're thinking, oh, I still feel a bit weak. I'm going to eat some more puff puff and I'm going to eat some more biscuits because they're quick. So quick one, try and have fruit in your bag or seeds in your bag. I don't know if anyone's into eating seeds, but it actually can be helpful. Sunflower seeds, they sell them in packs. You can chew on the seeds, or sunflower seeds and it will come back to me. There's another type of seeds that they're really easy to eat, and they're great as a snack, and they will manage your blood glucose levels, as are the bean snacks. There are some bean snacks now that are sold in the shops. Brilliant again, for a snack rather than something like crisps, which will just raise your blood glucose and drop you and give you fats that are not as helpful. Comfort eating tends to happen when we don't feel so good. Another indicator that there might be something going on inside. Comfort eating is usually synonymous with the change in the weather. So we feel a bit colder, we have, more puddings, more sweet foods. Again, it may just be worth looking at the blood measures in the body. What's my iron doing? What's my selenium doing? What's my vitamin D doing? Because your body is asking you for more because something is not going on too well inside, as well as, of course, what's going on in the environment around us. The thing about comfort eating is we will feel good for a few minutes, maybe for an hour, but actually it will lead to those spikes in blood glucose. So the spike up, you feel really great. The spike, as it drops and that spike drops, you will feel really, really quite low. And that can, if we're sustaining that can actually have long-term effects on our mental health and lead to forms of depression. Quick one before I come to an end. Fat really matters. I know we keep saying low fat, low fat, low fat. Fat really matters. Quality and quantity matters. Your brain, that hub that keeps us alive, is 80% fat. In fact, it's probably, 80% fat and the rest is water. It's a fat ball. It's a ball of complex fats. And nerve cell membranes have a very high fat content of polyunsaturated fats, especially what we call DHA. And they're really important for maintaining our nervous system. So low fat is great. We don't want people to eat too much fat, but the type of fat that we're eating is really important. So if you look on the screen, we've got unsaturated fats. So that would be in oils like olive oils. I don't know if you can see the seeds there. That actually is melon seed. That's egusi melon seed. So all of those wild seeds are really important for our brain, as is avocado, nuts, walnuts, Brazil nuts, oily fish, salmon, but mackerel is also a friend. But the beauty of these fats is that they are really important on how fluid your brain is. And therefore, it's so important for signaling for the movement of serotonin and dopamine. So a lack of these types of fats can make us feel anxious. So anxiety can be a product of not having enough fat. In postnatal depression, it's thought that if mum is breastfeeding baby, the baby's getting all of the good fats and therefore she's left with none and she's feeling therefore quite anxious. Caffeine, again, will have a very similar effect on us. Caffeine is a stimulant. And a lot of the time we're thinking, I'm not feeling so good. So we take caffeine. It has that effect of making us feel better momentarily, but can actually affect anxiety levels and can, for some people, cause bowel disturbance. And again, fluid dehydration can actually affect us. If we're dehydrated, our mood will be low. If you're not sure if you're dehydrated, check your wee, check your wee, check your wee. If your wee is dark in color, it's probably because you're not drinking enough fluid. When I say fluid, I mean water. Tea and coffee counts, but remember, caffeine is a diuretic. It makes you go to wee. So drink plenty of water. Please, please, and please, alcohol will make you feel good. I'm not the alcohol police. You make your choices about alcohol. Obviously, don't overdrink, but alcohol will make you feel good. If you do drink alcohol, it is not a hydrant. It doesn't hydrate. So if you do, make sure you're drinking plenty of water. Try to keep your alcohol low, have alcohol-free days, but please don't go to the alcohol to help make you feel good, because it will, but your body will say, give me more, and that can lead to uncontrolled drinking. So the rule is balance, and yeah, I'll stop there and just see if we can